starts at 1 p.m. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting starts at 1 p.m. local time. Streaming is paused during breaks. Audio streaming of today's council meeting.
I can't see the on air, so we're on. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to councillors, staff and visitors. Those who are here, welcome. Thank you for being here. For those that are listening online, welcome to you as well. Just a reminder that it is recorded, so people with their mobiles, if you could have them switched off, it would be appreciated. Thank you, and we'll open the meeting. So just have three apologies for today. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Cox and Councillor Spencer. Declaration of interest. There's a few declarations of interest. Councillor Mackenzie. 16.3. Councillor Dawkins. 16.3. Million Paul's Walk. Councillor Harris. 16.1, the Carol by Candlelight, and also 16.3, the Launceston Walk. Thank you. And Councillor Priest. 16.1, Carol by Candlelight. Thank you. And Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. 16.2, major sponsorship and productions.
Thank you. I think they've got those, have they? Staff have those. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. I'm happy to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of August. Move Councillor Harris. Seconded Councillor Soward. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. There's no deputations, no petitions. To have a community report from Mr. Paul O'Rourke. If Paul is here.
Yes, good afternoon. Good to see you. Thank you for the invitation to come and just share for a few minutes about Loaves and Fishes Tasmania. My name is Paul O'Rourke. I'm the Community Partnerships Manager. Each year, Loaves and Fishes rescues about 1 million kilos of food that would otherwise end up in waste, and we repurpose and then redistribute that free statewide through about 220 community agencies. Here in Launceston, we work through many schools that have either breakfast or meals programs, the Benevolent Society, Anglicare, St Vincent de Paul, and several neighbourhood houses. UTAS did a survey April-May this year and found that 1 in 5 Tasmanians don't have enough to eat. Yet conversely, 1 in 5 grocery bags of food that we buy ends up in waste. So statewide, in fact Australia-wide, we waste about a third of all the food that we actually grow. Food that's perfectly edible, but we waste it because it's the wrong size or colour. It's excess to what can be used at the time. Perfectly edible, but for whatever reason they can't get rid of it, can't harvest it, so it gets ploughed back into the ground. It's used for animal feed, but we'd prefer that it goes to us. And so, as I said, we're collecting or having delivered to us about 1 million kilos of food a year from farm gates, from bakeries, from poultry and other organisations, as well as restaurants, retailers, wholesalers and manufacturers. We store that in our warehouses in either Hobart or Devonport, and then we take a portion of it, we take it to our kitchen in Devonport where we make ready-to-eat meals. We make about up to 10,000 meals a week, which we then package and then redistribute statewide. And we distribute that through as either fresh produce or, as I said, in the ready-to-make meals. We started in 2018 under an agreement with an organisation many of you would be familiar with, Second Bite. So Second Bite relinquished its operations in Tasmania to what became Loaves and Fishes. And so since 2018 we've been doing that. We are about 55% funded by the state government. The rest we have to raise, and of course we get that 1 million kilos of food which is given to us for free, but obviously costs a lot to collect and then keep cold and then distribute statewide. we couldn't exist without community partners. So, as I like to say, we don't actually give food to people, we give it to agencies who best know who to distribute that food to those most in need, and they're people on the ground. So we're very thankful for those 220 community partners. Each week about 3,500 kilos of food that we distribute throughout the Launceston local government area, and we conservatively reckon we feed about 3,000 to 4,000 people a week. So that's us. Thank you very much for your time and for your interest, and thank you for your service to this area through the council.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for your time and for the work you do. Please pass on our thanks to your volunteers. I'm sure you've got many volunteers that work as well, so thank them too for the work they do in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. So public question time. We've got the questions on notice there with the answers are recorded. Then questions without notice. So any questions without notice? Please state your name and address before you ask the question, especially for those recording and listening online. Thank you.
Sue Rafferty. I think Vermont rather than Mowbray would be the correct address. I've spent this last fortnight trying to assess accountability in the event the Veolia site on Churchill Park Drive goes ahead. A senior councillor informed me recently that Roger Jench, as Minister for Justice, had the power to overturn the decisions made to date, so I emailed him. This is his response in part. In regard to your recent emails about the Veolia facility in Invermay, we refer to previous correspondence sent to you by the Premier and Minister Jench, and confirm that the assessment and determination of a development application is solely a matter for the relevant council. To date, every avenue I have pursued has ended in a lack of accountability. Page 19 of the Rampat document clearly states that if there are more than 2 complaints a year regarding noise, environmental impact, litter or runoff, the company is in breach of its operating licence. I can see that's going to go down well. The document does not explain consequences, avenues of complaint or accountability. The clearest answer to date is contained in Minister Jench's reply to my email. Council is the accountable body. So my question, in reference to the proposed Veolia development, what process would be undertaken by Council in the event of more than 2 complaints per annum? And would this include a transparent complaint process, including contact details for Council and any recourse undertaken?
Thanks for that question. Our website clearly goes through the process. I'm not going to go through that, but the website of
Which
Council,
website?
Council's website, has the process for any complaint.
Can you please provide me where that is?
Well, yeah, any website, Launceston City Council. That's not too hard to find.
Residential noise pollution.
Residential noise pollution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at the last meeting, Mr Stretton stated that the contract with Veolia has not been signed. My question, if Council voted against the proposal and haven't signed a contract with Veolia, why are some senior councillors so adamant to me that it's going ahead?
Yeah, look, we'll have to check our records, but our CEO doesn't believe that's what he said, so we'll have to check the recording for that. So take that on notice then.
All right. Question 3. On page 3 of the Rampat document, the appellant has not demonstrated or shown an acceptable solution to performance criteria P1, where it states that the use must not adversely impact on the amenity of nearby sensitive use, which are dwellings, having regard to the nature of the proposed site, the nature of the emissions, the proximity and number of sensitive uses in the area, the topography of the site, any mitigation measures proposed, the proximity and number of nearby emitting uses. It also states that uses must be set back from the site of a sensitive use a distance of no less than 100 metres. Very interesting. It was a ruling from RAMPAT that the proposal must satisfy the performance criteria in P1. So my question, regarding the proposed Veolia development, how can Council assure the nearby residents that all of the above requirements will be met, including a buffer of at least 100 metres from dwellings, and what action will be taken in the event of breaches?
The CEO will answer that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to clarify, there's a little bit of confusion in that question. So the 100-metre attenuation zone is part of the acceptable solution. So it relied on the performance criteria to be able to be approved by the REMPAT. So the performance criteria, as is listed out in your question, there's a series of criteria that they need to meet. It's been assessed that they're capable of meeting that. There are permit conditions that have been applied to ensure that, and so the council's obligation is to make sure that those conditions are complied with.
Will the noise induced areas be outside that 100-metre limit?
As I said, so the 100-metre limit doesn't apply. The performance criteria is what applies. So that was an acceptable solution. They've relied on the performance criteria.
Thank you.
Back to the drawing board.
Any other questions from the public?
Good afternoon. My name's Jane and I live at the heritage end of Invermay. As Inveresk is built on reclaimed tea tree swamp, vibration from some traffic can be an issue. You only have to stand at Invermay Road and Foster Street to feel the road vibrate as heavy traffic passes by. With the increased volume of traffic through Foster Street, the impact of these trucks is likely to increase the damage to homes through vibration, resulting in cracked plaster and movement of home foundations. My question, who's responsible for the potential damage to homes through vibration from the new heavy traffic accessing the Veolia site?
Well, that is a civil matter, would be, with each individual. Do you want to go answer it?
Well, that's true, man. I mean, we can investigate it further in that sense, but generally, and it's been assessed by you as being compliant in respect of being able to operate on the existing road network, clearly for it to have been issued a permit. But if there were issues into the future, as there are anywhere across the city, there are generally a civil matter that would need to be pursued by the affected landowner.
Question 2. I have heard that all complaints regarding Veolia are to be made in writing, and the RAMPAT guidelines state that there are to be no more than 2 noise complaints a year, as you've previously heard. Therefore, when I'm woken up at 4 a.m, what action is available to me to address this?
Yeah, well, our complaints process is on our website, which you can go through and...
In writing, but I'm woken up at 4 a.m. Who is available to me and everybody in Invermay to complain?
Well, I said the process is there for you.
Right. Question 3. I recently filled out a flood survey, which was sent to a select few residents of Invermay. Beyond the ridiculousness of many questions and the invasiveness of others, what purpose has it served and how will it assist in planning into the future?
Yeah, you'll find that the answer to that question is already in our agenda. If you look at the agenda, if you get a book out there or go online, you'll see the whole response, the answer that we've provided in there to that question.
Why only to a select few?
Sorry?
Why only to a select few residents in Invermay? Why not to everybody?
I can't answer that. Can any officers answer that? Richard? The one down there. No, the one down there, not Richard.
We wrote to everybody who was on the council records as living in a levy protected area. So if there are people that aren't whose names or addresses aren't on the council databases, it's possible that we didn't write directly to them.
Sorry, but protected from what?
Sorry, this is not, you've had your three answers.
Sorry, but just to be clear, every property that is levy protected.
Okay.
So every property that benefits from protection of the levies, we wrote to.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. So now, under the use of the provisions of the Land Use Planning Act, Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to the items included in agenda item number 9, which is 9.1. No speakers for 9.1. Someone happy to move for 9.1? Move Councillor McKenzie. Second to Councillor Harris. Do you wish to speak to Councillor McKenzie?
Briefly, Mayor. Just noting that the reason that this is before us today is that it's a previously approved development application which has come back with minor amendment. I believe previously it was approved without representation. This one came with 3 representations associated with it, which are probably very similar representations that we receive every time we have a building built on the flood levy, which was about floods and traffic management and so forth. We had a significant conversation about that last week, or last council meeting on 3 properties right next door to that. And I won't go through the process again of going through all of the issues associated with that, other than the fact that we're getting an extra 54 square metre. I think the building was approved on 1,500 square metres, but when the design was done, it ended up being 1,554 square metres. In addition, I think the colour scheme was slightly modified by the tone of the yellow in the property. So to my way of thinking, it's been approved once before. The basis on which we've approved previous applications of this nature hasn't changed in relation that the road authority can deal with it. The flood protection issues are mitigated through the advice that we've received. And as a consequence of that, we should approve this today.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Not too much more to add, other than a couple of the residents out there, I guess we say, Launceston residents who did raise some concerns. One was on the overdevelopment of the site, which I think when this site was identified, it was considered as being ideal for a large box development, shall we say, rather than the CBD. And so this is just a continuation of that. And there was some quoting of flooding information in the Lockyer Valley back in 2011. And for many of you, you may remember that the Lockyer Valley showed a RAV4 being swept away by the floodwaters in the main street. And as a consequence, this township of Grantham was relocated. That will never happen in Launceston. We have a, very big warning because of the topography that we sit in, and we certainly won't have the nature of the flooding that the Lockyer Valley experienced back in 2011 because it's totally different topography. I know a fair bit about this because Rotary was very involved in the response for that flood. So for those who might have any concerns, interestingly, that single image of the car, most floodwaters rise very slowly and would happen at Invermay, as such makes pretty boring television. But that single image of the car being swept along has been rated at being worth many millions of dollars in aid that was donated because of the image of sweeping it along. So if any of you are old enough to remember it, because it was 10 years ago, that was something that doesn't normally happen in floods and certainly won't happen in floods of Invermay. It will be a slow, stealthy rise if it does breach the flood walls that we have. And give us plenty of time to get anybody out who might be so affected. So I have no problem with this particular DA and look forward to supporting it going forward.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd rise to not support this development application. Climate change is real. There is an increased risk of this area flooding. It's virtually guaranteed that the area will flood, as it has in the past at some point. Sea levels will rise. Major weather events, including floods, will become more severe, as well as droughts and all other types of weather events, as we are entering the age of climate change. This building relies upon the performance criteria when it comes to flood mitigation to avoid flooding, if possible, to be located in a site that would avoid flooding. Of course, this site does not comply in that regard. Therefore, mitigation measures have to be taken into account, emergency procedures and so forth, which has been done. But it's my firm belief that we should no longer be building on a floodplain, and that we are really just building increased risk as a city as we continue to do so. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor McKenzie, you wish to close?
Thank you. And just to counter the comments made by Councillor Walker, the buildings are designed to withstand the floods if they do come. I don't think around this table there are any deniers of climate change and the fact that the weather will change and we may get a flood event in there. The buildings are designed, let's say, I think residential would be deemed not to be an appropriate use of it. The buildings are built as concrete slab tilt-ups with electrical above the AEDP of 5.9, I think, something like that. So as a consequence of that, the buildings are designed for the water to rush through. Most buildings are mitigated by having emergency plans. As Councillor Harris said, I think it's something like 36 hours notice coming through from the South Esk and 12 hours notice of a flood event coming into Launceston on the North Esk. Those numbers might not be quite correct, but somewhere around about that, so we have plenty of warning. There are emergency plans to evacuate from the point of view of the most important thing, which is human life, to get out, and the buildings are designed for the water to flow through, and I guess those people that decide to rent those places are well aware of those risks and plan accordingly within the building structure.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? That's one against, the rest are for. The motion is carried. So go on to Mayor's announcements. I don't think there's anything I need to announce. Councillor reports? Any councillor reports? No? We'll move on to questions by councillors. No? We'll move on then. Council workshop report 14.1. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Soward moves, seconded Councillor Dawkins. Sorry? This morning. Yeah, very correct, well done. Can we have that adjustment? That mover's happy with that, Councillor Soward? Very happy. That QV mag wasn't done due to illness. And the seconder, Councillor Dawkins, is happy with that. So on that basis, all those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. So we go to 16.1. We do have some speakers, I think. A speaker, Lex Van Dongen, for 16.1.
Good morning. My name is Lex Van Dongen and I reside in Lagana. We have, when I heard about 6-7 weeks ago that there was not going to be carols for candlelight, I decided that wasn't good enough for Launceston. So one of the reasons was that under COVID conditions, the carols couldn't be held in City Park with the accepted number. There was a 2,000 people limit. So we started looking around for other premises, other venues to hold the candles by candlelight. The UTAS Stadium wasn't available. We looked at a number of other venues that could be suitable or could be made suitable, and taken up with cricket and other things, we couldn't find any premises within the Launceston area. So we looked further afield and we found that the country club was willing to hold it. We can have 4,500 people there on the golf course. So we started investigating and did a bit of a study as to whether it was viable, and we're going like great guns, as I would call it. The thing that I'd like to mention is that the carols are for the people of Launceston, and I would say that most people living in Launceston do not realise that the country club's outside the Launceston Council's jurisdiction, nor do a lot of people living in the Meander Valley Council feel that they're part of Launceston. So I think it's certainly good for the Launceston people. We've even been able to acquire buses to pick families up from Ravenswood and Rochalee and those areas like Georgetown and Beauty Point. The West Hammer Council is also contributing towards the cost of the carols. We've got about 4 or 5 Rotary clubs involved, and I want it free for all people.
Yep, thank you. Your time is up. Thanks for that.
Sorry.
That's the only speaker that I have. There's no other speaker. Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Walker. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Mackenzie?
Yeah, I do, thank you, and thanks Mr Van Dongen, and thank you for your efforts to actually make sure the carols happen in 2021. Clearly, as stated, the carols will be in a different municipality, and clearly, as Mr Van Dongen said, most people think of Country Club as being in the Launceston municipality. Unfortunately, the rates notices would suggest otherwise. But regardless of that, certainly the people of Launceston will benefit from the carols being held. It's an annual event which is fantastic, that has been managed to be picked up and run on by a number of years previously by the Rotary Club of Sunrise. And I think it's fantastic the Rotary clubs of around Launceston have taken on board the opportunity to actually put them on again in 2021. And I think the small amount of contribution that's being asked by the City of Launceston is most appropriate in the circumstances. The residents of Launceston are going to get the benefit of those carols being held. So whilst I prefer it to be in the municipality boundary, I appreciate the reasons why it can't be, and I'm very happy to support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I support those comments from Councillor Mackenzie. I appreciate the efforts that the Rotary Club is making, and I thank Rex for coming in and talking to that. I realise now that it is the Meander Valley Country Club Casino, not the Launceston Country Club Casino. And look, that's great that it can be held there, but of course, I'm sure it'd be everyone's wish that it could become closer to the centre of Launceston at some point for it to continue. But certainly congratulations and thanks for the efforts that are being made to make sure it is an event this year.
Thank you. Councillor Soward.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I just wanted to echo the comments of Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Walker, and just wanted to add a couple of little things. One of the things I think that we probably need to be cognisant of in the last 18 months, I guess, with COVID, is the fact that things that once upon a time were, if you like, annual events or things as they were set up and run a certain way, that's changed. And that doesn't mean like it's going to be forever. We've had events that we've lost in the city. For instance, just to share a couple, the normal, if you wanted to call that Festivale that we normally ran differently this year. It ran as something else on our stadium out at the UTAS Stadium. We've seen just this very weekend ahead, Mr Mayor, if someone had said 2 years ago there will be AFL finals in Launceston because they can't play them in Melbourne, people wouldn't have believed you. So it's a community being nimble. So in this instance, Mr Van Dongen and his team, as he's articulated in his speaking earlier, they made a decision that they didn't want to see the carols by candlelight, which are an institution in this city and this community, be lost. So, yep, they've done something different. And full credit to him and his team. And the thing that made me really happy with this when I read about the work that was going on, and he did touch on that, is the fact that they're seeking to provide transport to get people there from other parts of the city. People who may live in an area that doesn't have reliable public transport, or public transport on a Sunday is restricted, or may not have a car. So full credit to him for that. But I just wanted to add, as I said, Mr Mayor, that it is important to be nimble. It is important to try and do things to keep iconic events and iconic special things going. And I reckon if you talk to people in Launceston and ask them to list what was an iconic event, what is special, the Christmas parade always gets mentioned and the Christmas carols always get mentioned. So very happy to support it.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Mackenzie wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That is all councillors present. That is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 16.2, major... Oh, better allow those two got to come back in and go out. Well, we'll do it in sections, yeah. Oh, okay. Declare an interest in that one. So on this one, how many are leaving the room for this one? Just... Oh, we have speakers. I apologise. Oh, thank you very much. Councillor Stojantek. I don't know whether we all... Oh, we'll see how many are left. Yeah, okay. Owen Tilbury.
My name's Dwayne Barracar, Newstead, one of Launceston's newest residents, and I hope to be the Bofa Festival manager. Owen and Helen are in their 70s and can't do this forever. We plan to bring in many more and more active board members and volunteers to ensure the sustainability of the festival, preserving their legacy and also allowing Bofa to be valued by ongoing generations of Launcestonians. The expansion will involve tapping into the population of exceptionally talented people moving to Launceston in record numbers, and also into the native Launcestonians who want to make Launceston a city that is bigger than it seems, a city that is a profoundly important city of culture. Every cut in funding for Bofa means that we need to make the festival lesser, smaller, less culturally significant. Every cut in fundings means that we show one or two less films or advertise less. Every cut in funding means that Bofa gets smaller.
Mr Tilbury.
Owen Tilbury, East Launceston, and Helen Tilbury, same abode, thankfully. Bofa's been around since 2010, and in that time we've had great support from the City of Launceston. We thank you for that. We were the recipients of signature funding at $20,000 over 3 years, I think in 2014, 15 and 16. We took a pause in 17 for technology reasons, and when we came back, our funding was reduced to $15,000. In 2019, if I remember correctly, we were offered again the opportunity to become a signature event. And because of uncertainties, we decided to continue with single-year funding. So in 2019 and 20, we were given $15,000. This year, for 21, we've had $15,000. 22, we've applied for $15,000 again, but we are being offered in the events budget $11,250, which is a 25% reduction. If you take it over from the period from $20,000 down to that $11,000, we've had our funding drop by around about 45 or 46%. What's happened in the interim is we've become the first online film festival in Australia. Our numbers have dramatically increased in cinema over the figures that we were getting when we were a signature event. And so we would like to have our funding approved this year, for 2022, at $15,000, which is what we've requested. And in the application on page 17, we were asked the question, would the event proceed if you don't get the funding that you requested? And we said no. And for that reason, we would like to see this annual event continue. And if we don't get that funding, we would have to seriously consider pausing running the annual event for the foreseeable future. So we request the councillors to review the amount that's being offered to us and bring it back to the $15,000 that we have requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Thank you. So we have item number 16.2, event Moved, Councillor Stojanczyk. Seconded, Councillor Harris. That's the whole lot? Do you want to do the lot, or are we going to do it in?
We'll just do Panama and Australian Musical Festival.
Okay, just those two, Australian Music Festival and Panama. You happy with that, Councillor Harris, as seconder? Yep, thank you. Question from Councillor
Thank you, Mayor.
Dawkins.
Could the council officer please speak to the way that we work on the percentages? I understand it's between 60 and 83% of events have been funded under this program. Would someone please be able to outline how that's arisen?
Thank you. Who's doing that? Tracy? Oh. I thought you were getting up.
Sorry about that, I didn't have the figures in front of me. When the assessment panel members assess the applications, obviously all of the scores go into are combined. Scores of 81% and above receive 100% of the funding that was applied for. Calculated scores between 61 and 80% receive 75% of the funding, and then subsequently goes down from that. So it's the combination of the scores, but then the percentage of that is broken down accordingly.
Councillor Stojanczyk, you wish to speak?
Yeah, just briefly on the two events. So we've got two returning events, Panama and the Australian Musical Theatre Festival. So I believe the Musical Theatre Festival is in its third year and it's proved to be a great success to date with lots of participation. It's also great to see Panama back again. It was actually the last event I attended before our first COVID lockdown, and it was also the first major event I attended after that. And I believe that the beautiful vibe of the festival helped to carry many people through a very stressful period. They also set the gold standard for festival waste management, having virtually zero waste. So I look forward to supporting these applications for funding.
Councillor Harris? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present, so that is for the two, Australian Musical Theatre and the Panama productions. That is passed. Sorry? Oh, no. So now, do you want to do the others in a block, or you want to split them up any further? No? In a block? So who's moving as is? Councillor Stojanczyk? Seconder, Councillor Harris. You wish to speak to it, Councillor Stojanczyk?
This round of major events funding saw a diverse suite of applications from the Musical Theatre Festival, the Basin Concert, Panama, BOFA, Launceston competitions, the Highland Dance Championships and Encore's latest production, Jersey Boys. I would like to thank all of the applicants for committing to running a major event in this turbulent and ever-changing environment. I would also like to thank the officers for their work with the applicants and the committee members for giving up their time to read through all of the applications and attend the meeting. We're hopeful that all of the events recommended for funding will be able to run, and we will continue to be flexible if the delivery model needs to change due to COVID restrictions. I ask you to support our recommendations as they're in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Thank you. As also sitting on the assessment panel for the first time, it was good to see most of these major events coming back again. Things like the Basin Concert and the Encore Theatre production Jersey Boys will be enjoyed by many, and I do hope that the Breath of Fresh Air BOFA Festival does continue, despite the fact they did only rate 72% on their score, and they find a way to perhaps get an increased amount for next year. But that'll be for them to consider what they actually ask for. But at this stage, I'm happy to support the motion as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Mackenzie.
Thanks, Mayor. I think whilst it's a great job to do the assessment, it's also invidious when you have things where people don't get everything they ask for. And I must admit I was disappointed to hear that the Pestle Mall might not continue as in BOFA. It's certainly become an institution in and around the Launceston area. So that troubles me some if they do determine to do that. But we charge the assessment to a committee. They have a criteria in which they analyse the processes to determine where they fit in regards to the score of between 100 and 0, I suppose, as to their appropriateness and therefore the level of funding that we as a council put forward. I'm going to be the last person to stand up here and say I don't agree with you because I didn't do the assessment. I've got great comfort in the people that have actually done it, both our internal people plus the people that we brought in from outside to sit on these panels, who give up a lot of their time to go through lengthy proposals that are put forward, and therefore I'm not going to pick holes in their assessment process standing here before you today. I hope, like the comments made by Councillor Harris, that Tasmanian Breath of Fresh Air Festival sees its way forward in relation to it. But again, I think given we've had a process that we put in place, it's been assessed and recommendations have been made, I'm not going to stand at this table and vote against them.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Stosnicek, wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That is all councillors present. That is carried. 16.3, the small events. Move Councillor Harris. Oh, no, he's leaving the room. Oh, we have a speaker. Oh, thank you very much. So we'll... Yeah, David Jones, yeah. So we have a speaker, David Jones. Thank you, David.
Yeah, my name's David Jones. I live in... Sorry.
Wait a minute, just check your numbers. We've got 6. I think we better take one at a time.
I'll sit in here while
All come back here. Yeah, all come in for the speaker and then we'll do one at a time. Thank you, David. I assume it's northern suburbs he's talking about? No?
David Jones. I live in Youngtown. I'm just here to speak on the Ravenswood Billy Cart Derby that I've put in an application for some funding. I wish to thank Council for considering that proposal. I work in Ravenswood. I'm the facilitator of the men's shed in Ravenswood, and I have quite a lot of connection with committees and various local things that we do up there. And we thought the Billy Cart idea would tick all the boxes when it came to community, building community, connecting people, connecting youth, young and old, and various other groups of people. So the idea was that we would have basically 2 days. We would use the Ravenswood men's shed precinct to have a building day, and we would bring people in, people from other sheds, people from the local community, people in various other groups within the community to come and help. People donate time, donate materials to build billy carts, and then we would have a billy cart day where we actually race the billy carts probably up around Zion's Hill, which is actually quite a hill at the back of where we are in Ravenswood. So it was just an event that we thought personally, we've done billy cart events in the past through our church, and it was the sort of thing that everyone loves billy carts, and it's years since I built a billy cart. So we just thought this is something that we would really, it would tick a few boxes with bringing people together, build connections between parents and young and old. And as I said I'm part of the Ravenswood Action Group, and we connect different people in that group as well. And we also wanted to thank the council and build on council stuff. We had your community, the ABCD. One of your sites was Ravenswood. We built the Ravenswood sign, and it's patent to see that has built community just by the fact that the sign has not even been touched by anyone in the community. People thought that it would be vandalised within 2 weeks of it going up. And that's nearly 3 years ago. So I'd just like to commend it and thank the council for their work, and we want to build on that work that the council's done as part of this to extend the benefits to the community and build the community. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And you did impress because the committee said 95%, which is a fantastic score. So, Very well done. Now, we'll do one at move. We do the top two, and then you can leave. Thank you. So we do on Northern Suburbs and the Starting Point Neighbourhood House. Someone happy to move? Councillor Harris. Seconded, Councillor... Oh, was it Councillor Stojanczyk, was it moving? Did I get it wrong? Councillor Stojanczyk, sorry. And seconded, Councillor Dakin. I've got that right, have I? Good. So, Councillor Stojanczyk, you want to speak to it?
You don't. No.
No? Okay. Councillor Dakin?
Someone better speak to it. As obviously sitting on the committee of the sponsorship and events panel, that's correct. This did get 95%, and I don't know how to get 100, to be honest. I should say for both of these events, fantastic, and we'd love to see more of these events in the community. And I think that there's going to be a lot of councillors that are involved making a lot of billy cuts. So congratulations.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Harris?
Yes, I'd just like to say congratulations about the billy cart derby as well. I have fond memories of building billy carts in West Launceston. The hills are a bit longer up there though, so it will be interesting to see how they go at the Zion's Hill Church ground, which was part of the old Ravenswood High School. But I think this will be a great event, and someone did tell me that they once used to race billy carts down the road in towards the Trevellyn Dam back in the day. So that would be an interesting part perhaps for it to move to. It would be a very long event, but it would be an interesting thing to have shut the road and run it down, something like that. But anyway, we'll look forward to the first one up there at Ravenswood.
Yeah, I know they used to do it at Amy Road. St Giles had one. Very clear. Any other speakers? No. Councillor Stojanczyk, wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. That's the first two. Now, so, Stojanczyk, you're moving? No? So if you just say that, Councillor Stojanczyk, you're moving?
Sorry, just moving 16.3, accept the RSPCA and the Launceston Walking Festival, and the two we've already done. So
You just both.
Okay. So you just... Doesn't matter which way we go.
Have you got that? Watch. I'm not quite clear, but anyhow.
Go a bit slow.
Everything except the RSPCA and
Everyone, yep, except the RSPCA and? Oh, the Walking Festival. Okay. We've got that. So everybody's still here, we're right. So that's moved by Councillor Stojanczyk. Is there a seconder? Councillor Harris. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Stojanczyk?
Sure. We're excited to receive such a colourful array of applications in the small events category. I was particularly pleased to see 3 events involving the northern suburbs, which we've already approved, obviously, a couple of those. So the Ravenswood Billy Cart Derby, the Soggy Bottom Boat Regatta, which is held in Waverley, and the Northern Suburbs Variety Show. I encourage everyone in the community to try to support these events. We've been so fortunate in Tasmania that we haven't as yet suffered from extended periods of lockdown. So I think we should make hay while the sun shines and get involved in these small events who are taking a big risk by organising an event in the current climate. We've put forward applications worth $83,000, as you can see from the agenda, but the budget for the small events is only $65,400, so we're proposing to use the balance left over from the major events for the gap there, and I would ask everyone to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Just briefly, just to say, I think one of the really good events out of this is a new event for the Van Diemen Street Rod Club, which will have a car show back in the centre of the city, based on the Patterson Street East car park. Now, this is a great thing for the city because it will enable all of the car enthusiasts to come into the town, and hopefully the shop owners will open up their stores. And certainly, if you look at the success of the hot rod show that is out at Deloraine, which attracts 400 or 500 cars and probably 4,000 or 5,000 people, it is in fact the busiest trading day for Deloraine in the year. So I hope our traders take advantage of this. It is in early January, so it should be an ideal time for them to do so. Also, I'd just like to say that it's great to see some other existing or new events to do with music being included on this particular program, including the jazz events around the river. And to me, the idea of jazz and the river seem to just go hand in hand. So I look forward to supporting these events.
Thank you. Councillor Soward.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to just obviously acknowledge the hard work of the committee that's gone into assessing all of these, and the even harder work of working out when people have to vote and stay in the room. It's very, very challenging, Mr Mayor, very difficult, and it highlights obviously the high level organisation and involvement that our councillors have to their credit. All I wanted to do, Mr Mayor, when we passed the council budget a little while ago, one of the things I always mention is how diverse that budget is in terms of trying to reach everyone in our community with something. And if you want an example, Mr Mayor, this is a perfect example. If you go through the whole list, but particularly the tranche of events we're dealing with now, there is a whole range of things that are supported. You know, different interest groups, different areas of the city, different areas of the community. And I think that that's just wonderful. So full credit to the committee for their work, full credit to those who have put in the time, the volunteers, Mr Mayor, that you always highlight, that have presented this wonderful suite of events for us today, and we look forward to seeing them come to fruition. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Dakin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on those comments, I'd also like to thank the staff, to Stephanie and to Tracy, who've done a fantastic job. And it's a great panel to be on, along with obviously the chairperson and Councillor Harris. When you're talking about ukuleles, soggy bottoms, billy carts, jazz, run, swim in the gorge, and we were trying to work out which council is going to do what. I think I'm doing all of them. It is fantastic, and it's really heartwarming to see, so we hope to see more and more in the future. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing soggy bottom billy cart. Good on you. Any other councillors want to speak? Councillor Stojanczyk, wish to close? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors present. That is carried. Now we do have two left. We're doing them together. Yep. Moving Councillor Stojanczyk, seconded Councillor Dakin. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Stojanczyk?
Just briefly, they're both very good events and very well supported, so I recommend them for funding. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dakin? That's been said. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And that is all councillors here. That is carried. Thank you. We got through 16.3. We go to 16.4. Better wait, yeah. The special events sponsorship. Councillor Dawkins is close by, is she? Oh, okay. So we're doing 16.4. Move Councillor Stojanczyk. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dakin. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Stojanczyk?
Sure. We had two applications under the special events category. We're extremely lucky to welcome back Mona Foma for 2022, and we had a new application from the African Music Festival, which has previously been held in Federation Square in Melbourne. We're very excited to hold both of these diverse events in our community, and I would ask you to support our recommendations for funding.
Thank you. Question, Councillor McKenzie.
I just noticed that the ask was for $80,000 for Mona Foma 22. Has there been any conversation with Mona about the acceptability or otherwise of the 50? Well, is that likely to have any concerns in relation to the event?
Tracy.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Discussions with Mona Foma are continuing. We have a very close working relationship. They admitted they were optimistic in asking for $80,000 and are more than happy to continue to run the event with $50,000 sponsorship.
Thank you. Councillor Dakin wish to speak? Any other councillors wish to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hand, and that is all councillors present. That is carried. And moving right on, we're down to closed. The late item. Could I have somebody move a motion to go to closed council? Move Councillor Soward, second Councillor Harris. And all those in favour, please raise your hand. That is all councillors that we go into closed council. Thank you. on air, so we're now back in open council. I'll have somebody move a motion. Councillor Soward moved, Councillor Dakin seconded, that we endorse decisions taken in closed, and the motion should be urgent late item, the civic reception recognition options. All those in favour? That is carried by L. Thank you very much. We'll close the meeting.